On March 15th, 2025, the United States launched Operation Rough Rider, a major military campaign against the Iran-backed Houthi rebels entrenched in Yemen. This move marked one of the largest and most aggressive U.S. military undertakings in the Middle East during President Donald Trump's second term, aiming to dismantle Houthis' capabilities, threatening international maritime routes in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. But what exactly is Operation Rough Rider? And how is it going to neutralize the Houthi rebels? At its foundation, Operation Rough Rider aims to dismantle the Houthi rebels' ability to threaten international shipping lanes and destabilize the region. The mission targets the full breadth of the Houthis' military infrastructure, systematically dismantling the critical systems that allow them to conduct missile, drone, and naval attacks. U.S. forces have zeroed in on a broad array of strategic targets. This includes the Houthis' radar systems, essential for tracking and targeting vessels in the Red Sea, as well as sophisticated air defense networks that shield their strongholds from airstrikes. By degrading these defenses, the U.S. hopes to clear the way for sustained aerial dominance over Yemen airspace. Ballistic missile sites and drone launch facilities have been among the highest priority targets. Houthis have increasingly relied on a mix of Iranian-supplied missiles and homemade drones to harass and disable vessels in the region, and disrupting these capabilities is seen as critical to restoring maritime security. Command centers, weapon storage depots, and supply hubs supporting these operations are also being systematically targeted with the goal of paralyzing the Houthis' ability to coordinate and sustain their attacks. Importantly, Operation Rough Rider has also expanded beyond pure military targets to strike at the Houthis' economic underpinnings. Notably, U.S. airstrikes have targeted the Ras Isa fuel port, one of Yemen's largest economic assets under Houthi control. The port is not only vital to the group's financial survival through fuel sales, but is also critical to humanitarian aid efforts, as roughly 80% of Yemen's food and medical supplies pass through facilities like Ras Isa. By hitting economic hubs, U.S. forces aim to further squeeze the Houthis' ability to fund and maintain their war effort. Yet, this tactic comes with the grave risks. Damaging Yemen's fragile civilian infrastructure has already triggered a growing humanitarian crisis, drawing sharp criticism both domestically and abroad. Since the onset of the operation, the scale of U.S. military engagement has been immense, characterized by a relentless series of airstrikes and a significant deployment of naval and aerial assets. Within the first month, the U.S. forces had conducted over 750 airstrikes targeting Houthi positions across Yemen. These strikes, predominantly carried out by U.S. Air Force and Navy aircraft, have been aimed at key military facilities and infrastructures used by the Houthis to launch attacks against maritime traffic. The operation is not only a matter of air superiority, but also represents a massive logistical effort to maintain a steady stream of precision-targeted strikes in a conflict zone known for its volatility and complexity. Central to the operation's airstrike campaign are the U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drones, advanced unmanned aerial vehicles capable of carrying out both surveillance and strike missions. These drones, often dispatched to identify and engage Houthi missile sites and air defense systems, have proven invaluable in providing real-time intelligence and targeting data. However, they have also been subject to Houthi retaliation, with the group successfully downing 7 U.S. MQ-9 Reapers since the operation began. The loss of these high-tech drones has been costly, both in terms of military hardware and intelligence gathering capabilities. The total estimated value of these drone losses has exceeded $200 million, highlighting the price of this high-stakes air campaign. The U.S. has not only relied on drones, but has also deployed 2 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, the USS Harry S. Truman and the USS Carl Vinson, to the region. These formidable warships serve as floating command centers and are equipped with strike aircraft capable of launching both conventional and precision-guided munitions. These carriers have been central in maintaining a sustained air campaign, supporting not only airstrikes on Houthi targets, but also providing logistics supports for various naval operations in the Red Sea. In addition to airstrikes and drone operations, the U.S. has conducted a series of naval interdiction operations. These operations have targeted Houthi smuggling networks, attempting to halt the flow of Iranian-supplied weapons into Yemen. By disrupting these shipments, the U.S. seeks to further degrade the Houthis' warfighting capabilities and reduce their access to critical weaponry. Despite the scale of U.S. military involvement, the Houthi response has been fierce and persistent. The Houthis have retaliated with their own missile and drone strikes targeting U.S. military assets and allied shipping vessels. The downing of the MQ-9 Reaper is just one example of how the Houthis have shown capability to disrupt U.S. operations in the region. Additionally, reports suggest that Houthi forces have launched numerous strikes on U.S. military bases, though these have not resulted in significant losses of personnel or equipment. While Operation Rough Rider has achieved significant military success in degrading Houthi capabilities, its human cost has been severe, with mounting casualties on both sides and a devastating impact on civilians caught in the crossfire. The operation, though primarily focused on military targets, has also led to a growing humanitarian crisis in Yemen, one of the world's poorest and most war-torn countries. Since the campaign began, U.S. estimates suggest that between 500 and 600 Houthi fighters have been killed in airstrikes and ground engagements. These casualties reflect the concentrated efforts by U.S. forces to dismantle the Houthis' military infrastructure. The Houthis, however, have shown remarkable resilience, continuing to resist the air campaign and launching retaliatory strikes against U.S. assets, prolonging the conflict and increasing the toll on both sides. But while the military targets are clear, the civilian cost has been far harder to mitigate. Yemen's population, already suffering from years of civil war, has borne the brunt of the collateral damage. The operation's airstrikes, especially those targeting Houthi-controlled economic hubs and fuel infrastructure, have inadvertently caused widespread civilian casualties. The destruction of critical infrastructure like hospitals, markets, and roads has compounded the suffering, leaving millions without access to essential services. One of the most devastating incidences occurred April 17, 2025, when a U.S. airstrike targeted the Ras Isa fuel terminal, a major logistical and economic hub for the Houthis. The attack, which was aimed at disabling the Houthis' ability to resupply their forces, instead resulted in the deaths of at least 70 civilians, including oil workers, paramedics, and other bystanders who were in the area at the time. The strike not only killed dozens, but also destroyed critical infrastructure that is vital to the flow of humanitarian aid to Yemen. Ras Isa serves as a lifeline for 80% of the humanitarian aid entering Yemen, including food, medicine, and other essential supplies for the population. The damage to this port, along with the deaths of humanitarian workers, has had a devastating ripple effect on the country's already fragile humanitarian relief efforts. Agencies have reported that the disruption has severely hampered their ability to deliver aid, leaving countless civilians in dire need of assistance. The situation is further complicated by the blockade of ports that restricts the flow of goods into Yemen. With the Ras Isa terminal inoperable and the conflict escalating, millions of Yemenis are now at risk of food and medical shortages. The United Nations has issued repeated warnings about the worsening humanitarian crisis, citing a growing number of displaced persons and an increase in preventable deaths due to malnutrition and disease. The civilian toll has drawn widespread condemnation from human rights organizations and international observers who argue that the U.S. has not done enough to minimize civilian harm in its campaign against the Houthis. Critics have also pointed to the Pentagon's inconsistent tracking of civilian casualties, suggesting that the U.S. has been less transparent in its reporting of civilian deaths and injuries, which has exacerbated international scrutiny. The U.S. military has attempted to defend its actions, claiming that it makes every effort to target military objectives while minimizing civilian casualties. But the sheer scale of the damage and civilian lives lost raises uncomfortable questions about the cost of these strategic moves. The escalation of Operation Rough Rider has ignited a heated political debate within the United States, raising concerns over the operation's human cost and its broader geopolitical ramifications. While the U.S. government justifies the campaign as essential for securing international shipping lanes and countering Iranian-backed forces in the region, critics argue that the operation risks inflaming anti-American sentiment both within Yemen and across the broader Middle East. Prominent U.S. senators, including Chris Van Hollen, Elizabeth Warren, and Tim Kaine, have voiced concerns about the mounting civilian casualties, with some demanding more transparency from the Pentagon regarding the tracking of such incidents. Their objections are not only focused on humanitarian issues, but also on the strategic consequences of escalating U.S. involvement in a region already fraught with instability. The broader question remains, does the U.S. risk becoming mired in a prolonged conflict with little chance of a clear solution? Politically, the operation sends a strong message to Iran, warning that continued support of the Houthi rebels will not be tolerated. This comes at a time when U.S.-Iran relations are particularly tense, with nuclear negotiations stalled and regional tensions reaching a boiling point. The U.S. views the Houthis as an extension of Iran's influence in the region, and by neutralizing Houthi capabilities, the U.S. aims to reduce Tehran's ability to project power in the Arabian Peninsula. However, the operation's long-term implications remain unclear. While Operation Rough Rider may disrupt Houthi operations and curtail Iranian influence, it also risks exacerbating regional instability, particularly with neighboring countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, which have their own interests in Yemen. Furthermore, the continued U.S. military presence and involvement in Yemen could complicate diplomatic efforts to reach a political settlement in the war-torn country. Operation Rough Rider marks a bold U.S. military initiative aimed at securing vital maritime routes and curbing Iranian influence in the region. Yet its human and political costs are slowly surpassing what was initially anticipated. The U.S. will need to carefully navigate the delicate balance between military objectives and humanitarian considerations if it hopes to achieve its goals without further complicating an already tight geopolitical landscape. We hope this video gives you a clearer understanding of what Operation Rough Rider is. Thanks for watching. Please share, like, and subscribe for more fact-based, in-depth content on global military events.